This is BBC News. I'm Sean Lay. The headlines at 10. MPs warn British democracy is in crisis because of targeted campaigns of hate and misinformation on social media. Chief Constable of the West Midlands admits his police force is at times providing a poor service and apologises.
We are incredibly busy at this time. The level of calls we're receiving this summer are very, very challenging. Sometimes that service that we're providing those peak times doesn't meet what the public expect.
Welcome relief for some as the cool air arrives, but strong winds could cause travel disruption as temperatures drop across the UK. Coming up this hour, millions gaze upon the glory of a blood moon during what will be the 21st century's longest lunar eclipse. For those lucky enough to see it, the moon passed across the shadow of the Earth last night, painting it red. And at 10:30, Rajan Dattar goes all Peter O'Toole on us. He's in Jordan for an action-packed reenactment of Lawrence of Arabia. That's the travel show in half an hour here on BBC News. Hello, very good morning to you. Welcome to BBC News. Voters are being systematically manipulated by the spread of fake news. That's according to a group of MPs. A report from the Commons Culture, Digital Media and Sports Select Committee, which was leaked by one of the witnesses ahead of its publication tomorrow, warns the UK is facing a democratic crisis. The committee says there should be tighter regulation of social media networks and news measures to combat attempts to interfere with elections. Here's our technology correspondent, Rory Keflin-Jones.
This report pulls together the story of an inquiry which has roamed far and wide, looking into the scandal over Cambridge Analytica's harvesting of Facebook data, examining the use of data during the EU referendum campaign and the extent of foreign interference in UK politics. It's the language used which is most striking. There's talk of the relentless targeting of hyper-partisan views which play to the fears and prejudices of people. It warns that our democracy is at risk and calls for action to protect it. Among the measures the MPs demand are new rules to make online political campaigning more transparent and greater powers for the Electoral Commission. They are also fiercely critical of the former director of Vote Leave, Dominic Cummings, who refused to appear before them. His decision to leak their report 2 days before they plan to publish it is unlikely to improve relations. Rory Keflin-Jones, BBC News.
Well, let's talk now to our political correspondent, Susanna Mendonça. Susanna, there's been a lot of kind of grumbling about the potential impact of social media and targeted advertising on elections and on voters in the States and here. Does this report in any way nail this problem?
I think what it does is it says what MPs have been saying for some time, what they've been concerned about for some time, which is whether or not there has been an impact as a result of this, what they refer to as fake news, on our own elections here. And they refer to the EU referendum. That's one of the reasons I think that they've been so focused on looking at this issue. Now, they've been looking into this issue since 2017. The whole Cambridge Analytica scandal, which suggested that people's private data had been harvested from Facebook in order to manipulate the messages sent to them ahead of the US elections. That was one of the issues that the MPs looked into. They also looked into the use of data during the EU referendum campaign, whether or not people were being manipulated there. And also another thing that they've been looking at is the extent of potentially foreign interference in UK politics. These are all things that MPs have been very concerned about. That's why they've been looking into this issue. This interim report, we're actually only supposed to get this report tomorrow. It was leaked by one of the people that they've criticised, who is a director of Vote Leave, which was the official campaign supporting leaving the EU during the EU referendum. But I think what they're trying to get across is this message, really, that they think that the laws need to be changed, because in terms of political advertising, we already have laws in order to make sure that, you know, the leaflets that you receive have got the names of the
so you know
organisations.
who's behind
exactly,
it,
you know who's behind it. And I think if you look at some of the recommendations that they're talking about in this report, in the leaked report that we've had, they're talking about how those laws need to be changed so that you could have an imprint that, you know, makes it clear where those messages are coming from, that actually what they've seen is that people are being targeted specifically according to their own interests. So, for example, if you're interested in immigration or in animal welfare, you're getting certain messages sent to you that other people are not getting, and that information should be available for all, but there should be some kind of register that means that everybody would be able to see what everybody else is being targeted with.
In terms of the kind of practicalities of what they would like to do, they're talking about more powers, for example, for the Election Commission to be able to kind of regulate this. But I mean, they're very much putting the onus on the social media companies themselves to say, look, it isn't good enough to say we're not responsible for the content, we're just a platform on which other people publish. It's a kind of Liberty Hall. They're saying that isn't good enough because of the politically sensitive nature of what some of this stuff is involved in.
And I think this is a battle that we've seen not just in terms of the UK's response to Facebook and other big social media companies, but also in the US, this concern about whether or not they are a platform or a publisher. Of course, if you're a publisher, then you would be subject to stricter rules already. And so what the MPs are basically talking about is that there should be some halfway house between it. You know, perhaps there should be some other way to identify a media company so that they do have greater restrictions put upon them. They're also talking about potentially taxing them, having some kind of levy upon them, which would be used for educating people about potential fake news and also for regulating the system, which of course would cost money. In terms of the Electoral Commission, there are limits as to what the Electoral Commission can impose as a fine, and so they're talking about increasing the fines that the Electoral Commission could impose upon those companies that breach the rules. But of course, all of this would require a change to the law. This committee that we're talking about is a committee of backbench MPs. We've got this interim report coming out tomorrow, and then another report we understand will come out at the end of the year. But essentially it's something that government would have to act upon in order to actually legislate on this.
Susanna Mendonça, political correspondent, thanks very much. And we'll be talking about the difference between facts and opinion a little later in this hour. Now, many will welcome some cooler weather today, but strong winds could cause travel disruption as temperatures drop across the country. 2 months of sunshine and dry weather mean some parched trees are at risk of falling over when hit by anticipated gusts of between 40 and 50 miles an hour. Ben Ando reports.
From sunshine by the sea to hailstones in the streets and lightning overhead, it may have felt like 4 seasons in one day for parts of the UK as storms swept in to bring the heat wave to an end. Cooler temperatures may have brought some relief to those feeling the heat of the last few weeks, but for travellers there seemed little respite, with ongoing problems with air conditioning equipment leading to long queues at the Channel Tunnel and bad weather creating hazardous conditions on the roads. In York, storms caused signalling problems on the railways and caused the singer Sir Tom Jones to cancel a comeback show at the city's racecourse. The organisers said the weather closed in with a series of storms hitting the course. More significantly, similar storms blocked the route of both helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft between his London home and Yorkshire. Bad weather overnight is causing delays and cancellations for other flights at airports including Edinburgh, Birmingham and Luton. Looking ahead, forecasters say temperatures will stay lower today, but the big issue could be high winds with gusts of up to 50 miles an hour. And that could be more of a problem than usual because dried out trees have branches and trunks that are more brittle and prone to breaking, which could in turn lead to more disruption, delay and disgruntlement. Ben Ando, BBC News.
Travel disruption continues for many across the country after the hot and stormy weather of yesterday. At the moment, there are delays of up to 5 hours on Eurotunnel. It's asked passengers not to travel unless absolutely necessary. P&O Ferries is asking customers to allow an extra 90 minutes to clear all security checks at Dover. And members of the RMT union at South West Rail and Eurostar are on strike for 24 hours today over separate disputes. South Western Railway says half of its services in South West London and southern counties of England will be cancelled. Eurostar says a normal service will run. And this was the scene at Stansted Airport this morning. Thunderstorms across Europe had a knock-on effect with delays and cancellations. Stansted says there are no cancellations today, but there are delays and some restrictions because of storm activity in Europe and the long queues this morning caused by passengers spending the night in the airport. Advice says check with your individual airline before you fly. Now, the Chief Constable of England's second largest police force has admitted it sometimes provides a poor service that fails to meet public expectations. Interviewed by the BBC, West Midlands Police Chief Dave Thompson said budget cuts meant a full range of policing can't be delivered. Seema Katecha has more.
A taxi driver in Birmingham. He says one afternoon a group of men threw some bricks at him. He claims the police response was nil.
I don't feel safe. They are not scared of police because they feel they will not get caught. That's what they told you on your face.
Like other police forces across the country, West Midlands Police admits at times it's struggling. The man in charge says sorry.
Demand on the service is going up because actually local authorities and others, services have been reduced, so more vulnerable people come into the police. And we are absolutely at a point where that is not a sustainable position for policing anymore. And I'm sorry about it, but that's the reality of where policing is now.
All the forces across the UK have seen their funding cut since 2010. New figures show the number of frontline police officers in England and Wales has reduced by 20,000 over the same period. The government says this force will get millions of extra cash over the next year and that it expects the police to investigate every crime properly. But according to the officer who leads the force, that's simply not possible. Seema Katecha, BBC News in the West Midlands.
An international arrest warrant has been issued for a man who killed a woman in a speedboat accident on the River Thames in London 3 years ago. Jack Shepherd, who's been on the run since May, was found guilty of the manslaughter of Charlotte Brown, sentenced to 6 years in prison at the Old Bailey yesterday. Charlotte's mum Ros and sister Katie have been at the Old Bailey for the duration of the trial, and they appealed for him to turn up and face justice. Well, earlier they spoke to BBC Breakfast along with the Met Police Family Liaison Officer Gavin Seeley. And Katie first explained how events at the court unfolded.
We didn't have any indication of why, really. Our opinion was that he's a coward, which was confirmed in a statement that he had written earlier this week. The judge read it out yesterday, and he said that the reason was that he didn't want to face us, and that he was a coward.
We knew on the Friday before trial,
right? So
we were going to trial on the Monday morning. And both Chris and I went to the Old Bailey, an admin hearing. We had an inclination that something was going on, and then in that hearing we heard for the first time that Jack Shepherd is most unlikely to attend his trial. Got a big decision to make at that point. It's a Friday. The family have geared up 2.5 years, 3 years to get to this day, this Monday of trial. Do I tell the family on that Friday by the phone call because they're out of London, risk their losing their weekends or worrying over the weekends, or do I tell them face to face? I made the decision to talk to Ros' mum and Graham dad face to face on the Monday morning, because then we've got the next question is what happens? We then have a legal argument on the Monday morning. It's a manslaughter case at the Old Bailey. Do we have this trial in his absence, or are we instructed by the judge to go find him and then we'll have the trial when we find him?
He's brought devastation to our family. It's an understatement. We mustn't lose the fact that Charlotte's lost her life, and it was a totally unnecessary loss of life. She had everything to live for. She was young. She'd been to university. She'd gained a very good job. She literally had everything to live for, and he didn't give that 1 second consequence in his mind that night that his actions would take her life.
24-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of murder and sexual activity with a child following the death of a 13-year-old girl. Lucy McHugh's body was found in Woodland in Southampton on Thursday after she was reported missing. The man remains in custody. The Charity Commission is looking into claims that the Joseph Rowntree Charitable Trust gave more than £100,000 to a group linked to a banned terrorist organisation in Northern Ireland. According to The Times, the group Chocna Fáilte shares offices in Belfast with the political wing of the INLA, which is a banned paramilitary group responsible for numerous killings. The Trust's website says its work is intended to promote the peace process. Final campaign rallies are taking place in Zimbabwe today ahead of Monday's presidential elections. The vote is the first since Robert Mugabe was ousted in November. Mr Mugabe's successor and former close colleague, ZANU-PF leader Emmerson Mnangagwa, is hoping to legitimise his rule. One of America's most powerful media executives is under investigation by the television network he runs, CBS, after being accused of sexual misconduct. Several women have told the New Yorker magazine that Les Moonves harassed them. Mr Moonves has admitted making some women feel uncomfortable, but denies assault. Shares in CBS have plummeted. Our correspondent Chris Buckler has more.
Leslie Moonves has been a leading figure at the American network CBS for almost 25 years. Reported on his own channel's news programs.
In news just out tonight, the New Yorker magazine is reporting that 6 women have accused CBS chairman and CEO Leslie Moonves of sexual harassment.
The New Yorker magazine says the 6 women claim, among other things, that Mr Moonves physically intimidated them, forcibly touched and kissed them, or threatened to wreck their careers. The CBS boss has denied that, although he has apologised for making some women uncomfortable in the way he made advances decades ago. In a statement, the television network said all allegations of personal misconduct are to be taken seriously, and the independent directors of CBS have committed to investigating claims that violate the company's clear policies in that regard. Mr Moonves, who's married to the well-known CBS presenter Jully, has been an outspoken supporter of the Me Too movement. Now he's accused of allegations very similar to ones he's so publicly criticised. Chris Buckler, BBC News, Washington.
Right, let's take a look at the headlines on BBC News. It's 16 minutes past 10. MPs warn British democracy is in crisis because of targeted campaigns of hate and misinformation on social media. The Chief Constable of the West Midlands admits his police force is at times providing a poor service and apologises. Welcome relief for some as the cool air arrives, but strong winds could cause travel disruption as temperatures drop across the UK. And of course it's been a bit unsettled in Europe as well, which makes what's happening in the Tour de France all the more exciting as the final stage approaches. Mike Bushell is at the BBC Sports Centre. He can tell us all about the prospects of Geraint Thomas and everything else in the sport. Good morning to you, Mike.
Yes, good morning. It could be a historic day, Sean, and everybody else. Is this the day, I wonder, that Geraint Thomas here is all but sealing his place in history as the first Welshman to win the Tour de France? He takes a healthy lead into today's pivotal time trial, the last competitive stage of the race, and it's a hilly time trial as well. Drew Savage has more.
One day more. Today's time trial is the last barrier to Geraint Thomas riding into Paris to take his place on the biggest podium of all. He began yesterday with mountains on his mind. On the start line in Lords, Welsh cycling fans were hoping their man's time had finally come. Thomas and Team Sky weren't expecting an easy ride, and they didn't get one on the final day in the Pyrenees. He does have the strongest team in the race, including Chris Froome, but eventually their numbers dwindled, and as fourth place Primož Roglič attacked, Froome fell behind, leaving Thomas potentially exposed without his last remaining ally. The yellow jersey under threat, but the Welshman held firm. His rivals couldn't break him. Roglič tried again on the way down and this time managed to escape, but Froome had recovered and led the chase on Thomas's behalf, ensuring Roglič couldn't threaten the overall lead, although he did win the stage to take third place overall from Froome. But the 4-times champion had done his bit for Thomas, setting up the man in yellow to sprint home for 6 bonus seconds. Not just defending his lead, but extending it. Congratulations, well earned. Drew Savage, BBC News.
So this is how it looks going into the time trial today. Geraint Thomas hasn't dropped a single second to Dumoulin over the race. He takes a 2-minute 5-second lead into the race against the clock. Chris Froome, he needs to claw back 14 seconds on Primož Roglič, but the Slovenian is handy as well when it comes to time trials. So the all-important time trial starts at 11 o'clock, but the competitors go off in reverse order at 90-second intervals. The top 20 are split by 2-minute breaks, so Geraint Thomas is last off just before 3:30. Chris Froome is chasing a podium place after slipping out of it yesterday. He goes off just after 3:20. They're expected to complete the course in around 45 minutes over the hills. 31 kilometres it is as well. Elsewhere, Britain's Olympic bronze medalist Vicky Holland has won the Edmonton leg of the World Triathlon Series. It was an imperious performance from Holland, who led out of the water and the bike stage before breaking clear of a number of athletes on the run, including Australian Ashley Gentle, and so adding to her win in the city in 2015. A trio of British athletes followed her in 3rd, 4th and 5th, so well done too to Georgia Taylor-Brown, Jess Learmonth and Jodie Stimpson. Johnny Brownlee, meanwhile, finished 5th in the men's race.
I wasn't sure how that was going to play out. We had a big group of us running together, and I know I've been running well, but I know Ashley's such a class competitor and the other British girls as well, so I just kept the pressure on, and I sensed that she disappeared from my shoulder, like you said, with about 700 to go, so I couldn't look back then.
Now, the Force India F1 team will complete the remainder of the Hungarian Grand Prix weekend. Despite being placed into administration, it's understood the team owe more than £160 million to its creditors. Well, on the track, final practice gets underway in just over 30 minutes with Sebastian Vettel looking like the man to catch in qualifying. He was quickest in Friday practice, with Lewis Hamilton well off the pace. Now, the Liverpool manager Jurgen Klopp insists he doesn't have to win the Premier League this season, as his opposite number at Manchester United, Jose Mourinho, has been suggesting. The two teams are in Michigan ahead of a pre-season friendly tonight. Mourinho has implied Liverpool's outlay of around £170 million this summer means they